Okay, we knew we could do it. We could do it together. Um, Today we're going to talk about what you want to think about when you're thinking about putting your foot in the dipping a toe in the water for consulting and freelancing. Now, I've been watching the same news that you guys have been watching about how many people are getting laid off, how many people are being blindsided by that, right? And not what we necessarily normally think about layoffs. We're seeing layoffs kind of across the board, all levels of workers, mid-level managers, highly sought after experts. It's kind of hitting across the board in a lot of places. And as we think about that, it can create a lot of anxiety. And so one of the things we want to do today is start thinking about whether it makes sense for you to have that consulting or freelancing business in the wings, or maybe even start spinning up that work so that, number one, you feel like you have a backup plan, right? It's like I tell my daughter, we don't have to be scared, we just get prepared. So you have that backup plan to start thinking about your plan B if something happens, and heaven forbid you get laid off. I hope you have a long, happy career where you love all your bosses, but stuff happens, right? Number two is if something does happen and you find yourself suddenly not at your W 2 job, you want to bring some cash in the door. You want to keep your skills sharp. Maybe you just want to keep that feeling of being a valued expert, right? So there's a lot of reasons to do this that don't necessarily have to do with seeing yourself as an entrepreneur right off the bat. So why do I know about all this stuff? If you guys don't know me, I'm Angie Boynton. I have spent the last 27 years as a business lawyer. I'm a high level commercial generalist, right? I do complex commercial agreements in my W 2 day job, but I'm general counsel of an energy company. But also, for years now, I've had my own business and legal consulting business and law firm on the side. And why would I do that, right? Like twice the work. And the reason is, number one, I love entrepreneurs. I love being an entrepreneur. It's the most fun I think you can have in a day. But number two, during times when maybe I've had a boss I wasn't crazy about, like it just turned out not to be a good fit, I had that backup plan in place. If you guys read the description for this live video, you know that I had a situation several years ago where we were doing an acquisition. We had a buyer coming in. I was highly recruited by the buyer to go over to the new team, like bonus and raise and all the gizmos and all the good stuff. And then a few months in, there was some political stuff happening in the background, and I got caught up in the jet wash of that. And my boss walked in at 4:15 on a Thursday and said, "Today was your last day." Blindsided me, right? So I know what it's like from kind of both sides of the equation. So let's talk about some things that you might want to think about as you consider whether it makes sense for your life to have that plan in place, whether it's more of a testing the waters kind of thing or an emergency escape hatch kind of thing to have your own consulting business, or even, it's always been your ambition to work for yourself, right? So as I've worked with all kinds of companies, big companies, small companies, entrepreneurs, established businesses, I've seen people kind of make some similar mistakes. We're going to talk about those and talk about what you can do to avoid those or make choices that make sense for you, right? So that's why I know about this stuff and why I want to share it with you today. So first thing I want to talk about, we have to do a little bit of housekeeping first, which is because I'm a lawyer licensed in 2 different states. So today we're not doing legal advice. We're just doing business advice and education. So that's really important. We're not creating any kind of attorney-client relationship here today. But that being said, if you have a question that you'd like me to cover in this educational component, you can put that in the chat. Randy, the amazing Randy, is in the chat making sure that we don't miss any comments or questions. So let's talk about where a lot of people are tempted to start and where it might not necessarily be the best place to start. And here's where I'm going to start off saying something crazy that you probably won't hear any other lawyer say, which is the first step a lot of people make when they think about hanging out a shingle or starting their own consulting or freelancing business is they want to go out and create a limited liability company. And I'm not anti that. I think it's a great idea if you know you're in it for the long haul, that you go out and create that entity, right? There's a couple of things I want you to think about, particularly if you're in a situation where you're nervous about your W-2 job, or maybe you've already been RIF'd or let go, which is when you create that limited liability company, there's some costs associated with that. And I see people use they go to a website, to zoom it into place and, or whatever, and they spend more money than they might have to for the amount of help they're getting. And then after you create that thing, you have to do something with it, right? So a couple things I want you to think through as you're deciding whether your first step is to create a limited liability company. First is it's going to cost you a few $100. Some of that is going to be the filing fee for the state where you create your LLC. Some of that is going to be the fee for almost any service or platform that creates that for you. So when you think about it, like I'll give you an example. In Texas, it costs $300 to file that LLC documentation with the Secretary of State. That's how you do it. You might go to an online platform that says, oh, we'll fill out the paperwork for you for $100, $300, whatever. It is possible, if you are a DIY person and you feel confident, to fill out the paperwork yourself online in a lot of states. So I think you should always get good advice. But if you are really being budget conscious and you want to go out and look at that form and see what all it takes, you don't necessarily want to give one of these document prep platforms hundreds of dollars for just filling out a form that you could do yourself, right? So that's one thing. Second thing is, because it is a form that's the same for everybody, sometimes for that couple, $300-$400, you might rather have a local lawyer, a small firm or a solo lawyer who knows a lot about business. You might rather have them do it because you want to start building a relationship, right? If you have ambitions and a vision for your business and you see it growing and growing over time, it might make sense to have somebody that knows your face and knows your business and you can call when you need them, right? So you want to make those decisions. If you're a DIYer and you want to go to a Secretary of State website or a platform, it's totally fine. If you want to find a local small firm, sometimes you can get the same thing done or better service for a very similar amount of money. So some things to think about. Second thing I want you to think about: do you need that LLC in the first place, right? So here are some things you would factor in. If it's just you and you're not going to file separate tax return for that LLC, right? If you are you're going to do what they call a pass through, right? And you're operating out of your house. Maybe you're a solo proprietor, right? So what's a sole proprietor it just means I woke up today, I decided I'm in business for myself, and maybe I'm a coach. I call my friends and I say, hey, give me $50, I'll coach you, right? You didn't, creating the LLC didn't give you permission to engage in the business, right? You woke up, you're like, I have a skill set, I'm going to do my thing, and you start going. Now, the difference between being a sole proprietor and an LLC is that LLC, which means limited liability company, gives you some protection, right? Like you can't, it's harder for them to take your house if you make a mistake, right? But a sole proprietor with the right kind of insurance might give you the same protection and less of the ongoing admin for having an LLC, right? So don't necessarily think that the right place for you to start is to run out and create an LLC. You might just start where you are as a sole proprietor and get good insurance for the same amount of money, right? So these are the things that, because you're an entrepreneur now, you get to decide for yourself as business decisions. What's the other reason you might want to think through whether you need an LLC? One of those reasons might be you've got a partner. You and your buddy are going to start the business, right? And so a lot of people, I see this all the time, create an accidental partnership, right? So if you don't have another type of a business, you didn't create an LLC, you and your buddy, you're sitting around, you're at the coffee shop, you're like, let's do it. You go out, you find a client, you start providing services. It's not your buddy as an LLC and you as a sole proprietor. That starts looking a lot like what they call a general partnership, meaning you guys are in business together. You're kind of assumed to be owning that business together in the proportion that you contribute to it, right? So just assume 50-50. And that means if he makes a mistake, you might be on the hook for it. Or if she makes a mistake, they might be on the hook for it, right? So don't accidentally create a partnership. Do it deliberately. Decide, I'm going to be a sole proprietor, or I'm going to create an LLC, or I'm going to create a partnership on purpose, and I'm going to have an agreement with my buddy that says, here's how we own things, here's how we divide things up. Think of it like a prenup for the business, right? It says how you're going to decide things, what kind of business you're going to engage in, how you're going to divide up the money, and what you're going to do at the end when you wind things up. So think about that. Oh, hi, Tennessee. Thank you. Thank you for saying hi. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about? Let's say you're in the situation where your full-time W-2 gig is going great. You just think maybe you've got a future where you want to be an entrepreneur, right? So a couple things I want you to think about. One is this does not have to be all or nothing. One of the most heartbreaking things that I ever saw was I was in one of those bro coach marketing communities, and we'll talk about bro coaches and marketing in a second. And there was somebody in my small group who had a fantastic job that she had loved for a long time, but she really felt a genuine calling, like destiny calling her to start a consulting and a coaching business. And she was all excited. She had everything set up. She had checked all the boxes, but she didn't have clients yet. And for her, it really spoke to her to take the leap, quit her job, and sort of, leap in the net will appear kind of strategy. And I want you to know that you do not have to do it that way, because it was bumpy landing for her. She's doing great now, but it was bumpy for a while, right? People sometimes want to say that if you're really committed, you'll just, burn the ships and you'll go for it. But I also think you can be an adult and a professional and watch your cash flow grow for your consulting freelancing business, and then pick a moment, right? When I hit X amount of revenue for X months in a row, then I'm going to take the leap, right? Or maybe you've got a W-2 situation that has a flexible enough schedule where you can just keep doing that freelancing consulting work and you don't need to quit your job. It just becomes, Christmas money, or replace your income money, or retire early money, right? So you don't have to buy into somebody else's vision for your life and your dream, right? Just because somebody else wants to, jump off the cliff and expect to fly doesn't mean you have to do it that way. And also, just because somebody else wants to keep their day job and grow slowly over time doesn't mean you can't make a leap of faith. You've got to decide what works for you and your family and your cash flow. Because, and if you are in a long-term relationship, this is an important conversation to have with your sweetie before you make the leap, of course, and really being honest with them about, here's my business plan. These are the milestones I think I'm going to hit cash flow wise in the next few months. Like, really do some soul searching about it. And I think we've got a video we're going to put out soon where I talk about how big corporate analyzes deals, right? Your main expectation is the base case. Like, if I hit these numbers over the next 6 months, I'm hitting all my milestones, I'm feeling good, the business is doing what I expected. There's also a high case, which is, oh my golly, we hit all our milestones soon. We got more clients than we expected. We got more money, right? That's your high case. That's your sort of best case scenario. Everything aligns. Everybody calls you back, that kind of thing. But the other scenario that is equally important is the low case. If everything goes wrong, what is the base level of cash flow, number of clients, hours you're willing to put in, money you're willing to put into the business? What's the worst case scenario where you would feel like you could still continue in the business, right? That's not the, oh, we gotta quit and go back to work number, but that's like a hey, I'm still doing it. It's just taking longer than I expected, right? That's your low case. So looking at things in that way does a couple of things. It gives you a way to set goals that fit a growing business. It also gives you multiple ways to win. You don't become an entrepreneur because like other people setting goals and you're not into winning, right? Like part of the reason people become entrepreneurs is they like to win. They like to compete and challenge themselves, and they like to achieve, right? So it gives you multiple ways to win. So think about analyzing it that way and have those honest conversations with your sweetie, with your best friend, with your mom, whoever around you is going to be the person who comes to you in 6 months and says, hey, we were really rooting for you, but don't you think it's time to be realistic, right? If that person's going to be around, talk to them now about what your plan is, and then go forth and like do it. Just go for it. Awesome. So, okay. We're doing good on time. Okay. So let's talk. Oh, a few more things I want you to think about if you're business building while you're doing your full-time W-2 gig, right? One is do not use your company or your job, the assets at your job to create your business, right? You can probably go on your company, the employee portal at your company probably has all those HR policies that nobody ever reads. Poke around in there and search and see if they have any rules against moonlighting or having your own business, conflict of interest policy, those kinds of things, and just check and see what it says. It's better to know now and get either permission or set your business up in a way that you don't run afoul of that. That's really important. For me, my day job has always been related to the energy industry. So I never had conflicts with my personal clients, my Happy at Law clients, which are primarily coaches, consultants, experts, IT freelancers, people that are changing the world. Those are my favorite people to work with. So there's never been a conflict in the type of businesses that I was working with. So just check that on the front end. And do not use your company laptop, the printer. I don't even use the internet, right? Like I use the hotspot on my phone. I use nothing that belongs to my employer for any of my personal business. I don't think it's fair. And some employers have a very they'll tell you you're stealing, right? So let's just not have that kind of trouble, right? So get your own stuff. It's going to be part of investing in your business. Do not poach clients from your employer and don't do it. Now, what about if your regular kind of full-time gig is actually a contractor position and not a W-2 employee? So similar kind of rules are going to apply. You want to find out if there's any non-compete or non-solicitation language in the agreement that gives you that full-time contractor gig. You might be working for a big company through another staffing agency, right? So they might have agreed to things that you don't know about. So just discreetly inquire and find out what the rules are and stay in the rules. You'll just avoid a lot of trouble that way. Okay, so Now, let's say you're like, I don't know what I'm good at. What kind of consulting or freelancing do I want to do? Part of my job as an in-house lawyer has many times been looking at those consulting and freelancing agreements from the client side, from the big company side. And I can tell you, there are consultants that do all kinds of stuff. So I want you to sit down and I want you to think about what you're good at, right? Like pretend that somebody who loves you a lot is bragging on you to one of your friends about how awesome you are at that's the thing you're going to consult on, right? I have seen such narrow niche consulting, right? Um, This also applies if you want to be somebody who comes in and does workshops or speaks at companies. What is your secret sauce? What is your area of specialty that you're going to come in and be the expert on that thing? That's where you start. Can you do other things? Sure. But we're going to stay really narrowly focused on that thing we're good at. Oh, and then also, like for instance, um, I am amazing at sitting down with businesses and helping them go through how they make money, what kind of contracts they need to protect how they make money, and what they need to do to use those contracts to create like the best client relationships they ever had, right? And also looking at what assets are they building as they build their business, and what do we need to do to protect those? It's my secret superpower, right? Except not a secret because at Happy at Law, we call that a business glow up, right? But that is a very specific, targeted set of skills. Can I do other things? Yeah, I'm an amazing contract writer, amazing at negotiations. I'm good at a lot of other stuff. But where I give people the most value is in that business glow up, where I sit down with somebody and I say, tell me about how you make money. What are your assets? And a question I'm going to ask you here in a minute, which is, let's say you build this business and it's wildly successful. How do you want it to end? So we'll talk about that in a second as well. So when you think about what do I do, you do what you're good at. Okay. Now that you know what you're going to be good at, you want to get educated. You want to learn about the business stuff that helps support that goal for your clients, right? Even for somebody who's been in big corporate for a long time or who has been an entrepreneur before, every industry has some quirks, and you want to understand how those quirks work. Here's an example. My very first entrepreneurial experiment was a coaching program for lawyers to help teach lawyers how to not be so stressed out all the time. And so as part of that, I learned a lot about coaching client agreements, right? There are some particular things that when I'm working with a somebody who does coaching or leadership coaching or life coaching, that kind of stuff, there are some particular things that I always make sure are in those client agreements that you wouldn't necessarily put in a software license, right? You wouldn't necessarily put that if you were buying 1,000 widgets out of a factory, but very important for coaches and consultants. So you're going to learn those business things for your area so that you know what you care about. Those are going to be related to the risks that you're willing to take on and the things that you care about in your contract. That's what you're going to focus on. Um, I'm going to call it a myth, but there is a common phrase people use when they talk about contracts, and that is ironclad. And I'll have people say to me, "Oh, I got an ironclad contract." And I think, really? Because it would be the first one I ever saw in 27 years of practicing law. They're just not, it's just not a real thing. You can have a contract that is really, really good and covers your main areas of risk and protects the things you really care about. But I'll tell you this, as smart as the person was who created that agreement, there's somebody out there who would go back through that agreement and find every little thing to fight about if it came to it. So Ironclad is not the goal. Protecting what you care about the most is the goal. Reducing risk, protecting your assets, building a better client relationship. That's your goal for your contract. So now that you've learned about the business stuff, you've picked a niche, you've started to think about your cash flow and how you're going to be in this for the long haul, you do need to think about what your contracts are going to look like. And the reason is, I want you to think about when a business makes money, how does a business make money? You think, oh, well, I sell an hour of time and I get money for that. Or I make soap or scented candles or, um, you know, uh, local honey. I make spa things from local honey, right? Like whatever it is you're creating or you're offering, you're trading something for money. But actually, it's the promise, right? You're trading that thing or that time in exchange for the person's promise to pay you and the other stuff that's in the contract, right? So I promise I'm going to send you this gizmo, or I'm going to show up and coach you or give you an hour of advice. And in exchange, you're going to pay me and you're going to agree not to sue me. You're going to agree to show up on time. You might agree that, you know, you might agree that if we have to go to court, it'll be in Texas, right? Those things that you care about are what go into the contract. So, one of the things that you want to do is start to identify for your business what are the things you care about and that you want to protect. And those are the contracts, the templates you want to go find. Now, there's a few different ways to do this. The first one's obvious. You hire a lawyer to draft some stuff up for you. So here's a secret about how lawyers work that you might know, you might not know. Every lawyer who writes a contract starts with a prior version of a contract. You don't start with a blank sheet of paper. So you start with a template or a form. So, well, why can't you do that, right? I could go out and we've got that. We'll sell templates to people, and we'll sell certain templates to people, right? It's important when you do that to know what you're looking for and what you care about and how that contract works mechanically. So, knowing enough about the legal stuff to be able to understand what you're agreeing to and what you're asking your client to agree to is really important when you're going to be in business for the long haul. You got it? So, it's not just that you want a good, we call them the essential agreements at Happy at Law. It's not just that you want your good essential agreements, it's that you want them to match your business and what you care about. You got it? Okay. So, how do we do that? Here's some ways I see people getting templates and contracts these days. Some are better than others. So, you can hire somebody to do that for you, either a custom agreement or a template. Custom agreements are more expensive. You're going to probably be hiring a lawyer by the hour to create that for you. Coaching and consulting, if you're talking about a services agreement with a statement of work, it doesn't necessarily need to be that unique. If you're talking about starting a software company that you hope to be a unicorn and IPO for $1 billion, you might want to spend a couple thousand, $5,000 and talk to a lawyer about that one, right? So you need to understand your business in order to pick the right tool for the right job. Having the custom experience of having a lawyer is great if that fits your budget. For a lot of people, understanding what they need and then getting some support to create a template for them will be great. So here's where I see people go wrong. And it is, guess what? AI. Over the past couple of years, I've looked at a lot of AI generated contract language and a lot of AI generated contracts. And I can tell you, I can spot them still today. I know the AI true believers are going to say, oh, it's getting so much better. It's getting so much better. When an AI generated contract comes across my desk, I promise you, I know that it is AI generated. I spot the mistakes. I can see the weird syntax. And the other thing that's a dead giveaway is that contract won't necessarily match how the business needs to be protected. And I'm not even talking about my side of the business. I know the other side of the business well enough. When I see a contract coming through that has something really obvious missing, and I'm like, oh my golly, they didn't do XYZ. And I can't help them, right? Because I'm on the other side of that deal. But I see the gap and I see the weird syntax and the typos and the weird sentences, and it just makes that consultant look like an amateur. I'm just gonna be honest with you. If you rely on ChatGPT to create your contracts, you're gonna look like you don't know what you're doing. It doesn't mean you need to spend $5,000 to get a custom suite of contracts from a lawyer, but it means that you wanna know enough to understand what you're buying and to get good advice about what you need. Otherwise, you're gonna look a little bit crazy when me on the other side or somebody like me sees what you send through. They're gonna be like, what is this?" You know? And I don't want that for you because you're a smart expert with a lot of valuable skills and a lot of good to give. Don't let a bad contract template make you look crazy. Like, no, we have better ways to deal with that. So get some training and education, get yourself savvy about business concepts, contract concepts, just get up to speed on it, and give yourself that benefit of looking like a polished professional, whether it's day 1 or year 10, right? Do that for yourself. Um, oh, you're talking about, ChatGPT's gotten better? Yeah, no. Here's what it's good at. Here's what the AI tools are good at. If you know enough to ask it a very specific prompt. So, for example, if you put into ChatGPT something like, "Please suggest language for an indemnity provision with a cap and a limit of 2 years for a business, um, in the coaching space," right? It can do okay with that, right? And it'll give you a starting place if you really are in a position where you're super budget sensitive and you're trying to DIY this stuff. Um, but as an overall thing, it's really tough. And, yes, Thrive Hive, lots of M dashes. We're really seeing the blowback from this in copywriting and in client delivery. Um, Here's the other thing I want you guys to think through when it comes to using AI for a lot of your thought process. Think of AI as a very competent but literal admin, right? Um, it will do exactly what you tell it to do if it knows how to do that thing. So use it to manage your calendar and make your travel plans. I had in there the other day, okay, I'm going to tell a story on myself, right? I had it the other day suggest a lookbook for me. I gave it my sizes, my hair color, my age, my role during the week, and I said, suggest 10 outfits for me with links. Did great, right? Or at least it gave me a starting point. I wouldn't have worn everything it told me to in there. And so for that kind of what we call recursive thinking, it's doing okay. It's process stuff, but we still need that human element. And we are seeing some of our potential clients coming in the door who have overly relied on AI for their own creative thought process, who are confusing themselves and finding it more difficult to make business decisions. So protect your ability to make those high level business decisions as a creative and as a creative and highly trained expert. Really protect that part of your brain. Um, it 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 might take some busy work off your plate, but it cannot replace your high level creation and thinking. So yeah, so word to the wise there. Um, let's talk about beginning with the end in mind. When you think about starting a business, it's kind of weird to think, well, how would I want this to end? Right? But it's an important step to take. So there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself when you're at that early stage. When you think about starting a consulting business, freelancing, or it's a product-based business, any of those things, and you want to think about, let's play that forward, right? 5 or 10 years down the road, the business has grown. We have you've got recurring steady cash flow. You've got a good base customer list. People are return clients, all of those things. It's going great. And at some point, every business ends. They typically end because somebody burns out and stops, because somebody retires, because there's a bad business breakup, the partners fight, the couple gets divorced. I call it the arrest, retirement, wrath. People start fighting and they stop doing it. Um, or, just drop tools, right? Um, I know someone who had built an amazing coaching business and had an email list with 35,000 professional women on it. It was just an amazing professional, um, who got burned out and just stopped, laid off her team, just stopped. And I thought, she stopped. I would have bought that. You know what I mean? Like, I might have not have given her the couple $1,000,000 she was generating in revenue a year, but that email list was incredibly valuable, right? That ongoing coaching, the course materials, incredibly valuable. But she didn't, as far as I know, have a plan to wind up the business one day. At some point, you're going to want to do something else. You're going to want to retire. You're going to want to go hang out with your sweetie. You're going to want to, you're going to want to go do something else, get rest up. You want to go sit on the beach, right? So thinking ahead for that lets us say, what are the assets I'm building starting now? For instance, an email list is a valuable business asset, right? IP is a valuable business asset. We'll talk about IP another day. It's certainly enough for a whole huge live stream on its own, right? But those pieces of intellectual property, course materials, procedures, know-how, processes that you've built. I know IT freelancers who have little special snippets of code that they've written, and that's part of their business assets. Now, will most of us get bazillions of dollars for that? Probably not, but there are ways to ultimately one day package that up and see if anybody wants to sell it and buy it from you, right? And give somebody else a head start. As opposed to, okay, I'm ready to retire. I've got my money saved up. My sweetie's retired from their gig, and I'm just going to run out the clock and not take any new clients and then fold up shop, right? It's a personal life and business and ambition decision that you make, how you want to end on the other end of this thing. So having that in mind now helps give you the basis for making decisions about, do you want to spend 3 grand to get a trademark registered, right? Things like that. Because when you know how you want to end, it tells you what you want to build today. Don't you love that? I love it. All right, we're at 2:45. I'm going to check with Randy and see if we have any other questions or comments that we want to cover, before we say thank you for coming. And of course, we'll do the like and subscribe thing. I hope that this was inspiring and helpful to you. I'm a big proponent of having that plan B in place before they come to your office and tell you it was your last day. Keep that flexibility, especially if it's something where you can ramp up and ramp down, like consulting, freelancing, those kinds of things. Having that structure, having your SOPs and your procedures, and knowing, having your client agreements ready, knowing how you would onboard and offboard a client, all of that ready to go can give you some peace of mind when, it's a little scary out there for folks. And a way to, feel like you're empowered and in control of your life if those kinds of things happen. And I think they happen to all of us from time to time. If we're working a W-2 job, then those are risks that we take with that, right? Anyway, thank you so much. We are going to ask you to please like and subscribe. We're going to have more business and legal education and stuff about contracts and all kinds of good things. They'll be right here on the channel.